that's life.
That's life.
That's what all the people say.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How you doing? My name is Dr. John Belkowitz. Hello! And we're going to talk to you about concrete today. We've got some questions, and I think we're only going to get through one question a video. I've been trying to speed through the questions and missing a lot of the detail, which in essence actually leaves a lot of plot holes, but you know, let's just get the whole story out there. So the question that we're going to address today is by Bill Mays. He's the VP of Premier Concrete Admixtures, I believe is the company name. And his question was, do you see a future for concrete maturity systems? And Bill, I absolutely do. Thank you so much for the question. I really do appreciate it. And concrete maturity systems are a controversial subject. A lot of people don't believe in them. A lot of people are sometimes selling them from more, or as, how do I say this, as more than what they can actually do. But that is obviously not the question. Yes, I see a future in concrete maturity systems. When I started out in the industry, really getting into development and design, the first concrete that I worked on was a fast track pavement. Concrete that developed strength 2 hours after placement to open it up to traffic. And I was the chump. Or not even that, we were also ripping and stripping forms for construction and turning forms. So I was the chump, either running out into traffic with a pendulum hammer, like a Swiss hammer, or a rebound hammer, popping the concrete to get strengths. And then, to be honest, that really didn't give us an accurate reading. We were in the middle of giving a presentation, but the privilege, nay, the pleasure presented itself to have Whitney join us. And I tell you something, Whitney, this is just an awesome topic for you to throw in your expertise.
Yes, I would love to.
Thank you for joining us today.
You're quite welcome. Happy to be here.
Happy to be here. So the question was, do you see a future in concrete maturity systems, by Bill Mays?
Yeah.
Where I was going was, I was in the discussion of, you know, I've been working on that fast track pavement for that DOT, and before I started using maturity, I was using rebound hammers, pendulum hammers, running out into traffic, because that's where the high early strength concrete became really popular. We were doing vertical concrete as well, but so when the maturity systems came in, I saw it as a convenience and a safety factor.
Oh, totally.
Now, I still had to run out in traffic, but now, you know, with a longer cord, it wasn't as, like,
Quite as dangerous.
But then there was also, I was getting a higher degree of accuracy, because that was one of the other things I said. The pendulum hammer, it was literally a hammer that bounced back and then rebounded a certain amount, and then that correlated to a strength. And with that, we actually had to do some tests on concrete and then break it to get a correlation. Rebound hammer, we had an anvil that would make it a little bit faster, but so the same thing, we just didn't get accurate data. So what are your thoughts on?
I totally see a future for them. I mean, I think as technology improves and as people are looking for more convenient and less invasive ways to do testing, I totally see there being a future with it. And there's more and more companies who are, I kind of hate the phrase dialing it in now, but trying to dial it in, you know what I mean?
Concrete IoT, which is, and I think we missed that definition, where maturity is gone now, is that you don't have to run into traffic. You don't have to plug into things. While
it can, like, be uploaded on your smartphone and different things like that, which is awesome.
And that being said, that technology where you don't need to use a wireless system, the wired-in systems are more reliable.
I agree.
At this point, at this stage in the game, but you can always, you know, go back and forth between those systems where it permits.
Absolutely.
So I think with the development of concrete IoT, the Internet of Things, where You don't even have to be on the job site. You can be
Right.
at your home, sitting on your couch in your socks and underwear.
Right.
Not trying to paint a picture there, but you could be off
Sure.
the job site
Right.
getting that information.
Anywhere in the world and checking it.
Anywhere in the world, and that's where, so I came into the game having that experience of being in the field and having the need, and then seeing that need grow, and then you came into the game with the concrete IoT.
Right.
So I think that's where concrete maturity has changed. Now that being said, here's my biggest argument. Whitney and I gave a set of presentations for Colorado Ready Mix
Yeah.
Concrete Association a couple years back.
2 years ago, yep.
2 years ago. I think we can post a link to the call for,
Oh, probably.
but I don't know if we want to put the slides on there. But one of the things that we argued is that maturity is not often used the right way. ASTMC 1074,
Yeah, I think it is
1064, 1074, whatever it is, we'll put the link below.
Oh, patchouli.
Patchouli.
Links for patchouli.
But it's
Never find AST.
it goes into detail about using or how to use maturity, and what people often don't recognize is per the ASTM, there is supposed to be a supplemental
Absolutely.
set of data points to verify the information with
Right.
maturity.
I think some people, and at least when we went and did those talks for CRMCA, there was question as to if maturity was going to take over for compressive strength, and I don't think it ever will. I think there's a handful of tests that are always going to need to be run. I feel like maturity is just another level of evaluation and some extra information, just like with any concrete that is going into some high profile case. You've got to be you have to cover a large range of tests and aspects, evaluate in a lot of different ways, and I feel like maturity is another way to do that.
So I'm going to argue it from the people who are selling the maturity systems.
Sure.
There are a bunch of them.
Right.
This is not an advertisement or a solicitation. I feel like you have to say those with a
Like that.
little bit more
Schedule.
gusto. Schedule. Philanthropist. Hot tin roof.
Oh my gosh, come on.
I don't know where that one came.
Here.
So I'm arguing from the maturity loggers systems selling point
Sure.
that if you have a known reliability of the system, and then you have a known reliability of how that system interprets the temperature data when used correctly, then you could, as a company, especially if you want to put a warranty behind it or a bond behind
Sure.
it, say, hey, you don't need to do compressive tests. I agree with Whitney, but more so, even if Whitney and I could be considered to be wrong, because we're friends with a lot of the folks that own these companies or a couple of these
Right.
companies, and they're great people, and they disagree with us to this point.
Right.
There's another thing that people, ignore or put in for a fake value or a filler value,
Sure.
and that's either the activation energy or the
Right.
datum temperature.
Right.
And those are very mix specific.
Right. Absolutely.
And, to do the tests to get that information,
It's extensive.
somewhere between $15,000 and $30,000.
Right, so just trying to throw those in to save money and save time in the lab, like there's a huge piece that has to be handled before that's going to cost more. You could end up saving money in the long run, assuming your materials and your mix stays
everything
exactly
works.
the same.
Well, not even that, but no, because you can't even say that, because let's say your datum temperature is telling you that the concrete has made strength sooner than it has, and the team is pulling the deck forms like from underneath,
Sure.
and if the concrete hasn't set up,
Right.
you got concrete and steel coming down,
Right.
right? Or if it's telling them that the strength is developing a lot slower than it actually is, now you're wasting time.
It delays the critical path.
And it delays the critical path. So, there are certain things that are being conveniently ignored
Right.
in the ASTM, which I think is limiting the adoption and really creating people don't have a lot of reliability in it.
Right.
When you see that, all I have to do is throw a temperature probe in,
Right.
like there needs to be some lead up to it to
Some
give them
explanation,
confidence in the information coming out, because garbage in
Equals garbage out.
equals garbage out. You can have the best system set up in the world, but if your data is skewed, and when you're assuming the datum temperature, the activation energy, and then you're not referring not referring, what's the word I'm looking for? Using a secondary source, whether you're doing, the cast in place cylinders or what have you.
Right.
If you're not verifying the information, and then the last piece of it is, and this is why people really don't understand what the need for or how to create the curve in the lab.
Sure.
And it seems like people are trying to ratchet back on
They're
that
trying
to
to
save
shortcut
money.
it, absolutely.
Shortcut it. The concept of the lab information is what the concrete will do, both fresh and hardened properties, in this standardized, perfect environment.
Right, but then you evaluate at lower temperatures, at higher temperatures. Like there's
you
a
can
range.
do that.
I thought you were supposed to. I thought that was
I
part of
don't
the.
remember if that was.
Like, to
it's
develop
a mean,
your initial curves.
It is. It's
Yeah.
a mean for the activation energy, absolutely.
Right.
And then from there to do the compressive strengths to create your maturity
Right.
curve, you're doing it in that standard environment to see what the concrete will do in that perfect environment. If when you go out to the field, it doesn't look like that
Right.
curve and it's it's outside of that plus or minus 10%. I mean, if it's heated up, yeah, that is a concern. You might be burning off water, but if it's really cold
Right.
and that maturity is not reaching where it's
Right.
supposed to be, or minus 10%, then the concrete is trying to tell you something.
Sure.
And I think it's either I really don't understand it, or the industry is ignoring that piece of the ASTM. And I don't mind feedback. I've been told many times in my life when I'm wrong. I feel like I've read over that ASTM
Yeah, you have several
like 40 or 50 times, and I feel like I'm interpreting that the way it's supposed to be interpreted. I just don't know if folks are using it. There's a DOT that took that ASTM, which I believe is 5 to 10 pages.
Yeah, I feel like it's closer to 10. It's a long one.
But there's there's a lot of tables in there, and if you take all that out, and they truncated it down to 1 1/4 page. And you can do that, but you're sacrificing a lot.
A lot of information.
And that's what folks have been doing, is sacrificing the necessary steps to use the maturity in the correct way to give you accurate information. And
Right.
because of that, there's not a lot of confidence in it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And you've got to do it per the standard to be able to have that confidence and
Totally.
and be able to use it appropriately.
Totally.
That's one of the reasons why I think compressive strength is always gonna be around, and it's a great test. But it's quick and easy. Like you
But
count
again,
your cylinders.
You have to understand what that information is.
I know
Unless you're coring the cylinder,
right.
the cylinders that you
Right.
cast, especially in the lab, represent what the concrete will do when it's in a standardized environment.
Right.
The cylinders, when you cast them, represent what that concrete will do in that cylinder. It doesn't say what the
it's doing in the
in-place
slab,
concrete
right.
is doing. That's why
I know
Swiss
coring
cheese in
is
your slab.
ideal, right.
Or using a maturity sensor, which gives you a temperature
In
and
the slab
time.
and in the on-site cylinders.
So
right.
that's the other thing. Whitney and I feel that there needs to be a change in the concrete systems out there, but that's a topic for another
Sure.
day. That's a topic for another day. So Bill, hope we answered your question where we think the future of maturity systems are. We've got to do another video on how we think the ASTM for maturity needs to be changed.
Sure.
So why don't we plan on doing that?
for the next one.
Yeah, for the next one. We'll put a link in there for that. Thanks for joining us today. Hope you learned something. Let us know if you got any concrete questions or concrete concerns. I'm John.
I'm Whitney.
Go concrete.
Beat asphalt.
But I don't let it get me down. 'Cause this fine old world